Christmas is approaching and we're getting ready for the season. We put up our Christmas tree. We haven't decorated it yet, but we got out some other decorations and we're slowly decorating the house. Like we're putting out this advent calendar, which we put out every year. It's really cute. You pull out pieces that are magnetic and then put it on the tree for each day. But I love getting out my cookie tins because that means I get to bake Christmas cookies. This is my mom and dad. My dad was born in 1918 and my mom was born in 1920. If they were alive today, she'd be about 104 and he'd be about 106. I'd say in this video they're approximately 28 to 30 years old. What you don't see in this photo is that my brother is sitting on my mother's lap. My mother's short, but she's not that short. She's actually sitting down in front of my father. And then behind my mother, standing to her left, are my two oldest sisters. Also not in this picture is my next oldest sister because she's not born yet at this time. My mother and father have passed, and unfortunately so has my brother, and I miss them all during this time of year. This is me and my mom on the day of my wedding in 1994. I can only imagine the dialogue we were having at this time during the photo shoot. Look at the smirk on her face. She was such a character. She would make jokes, but she was also funny in a quirky way, both intentionally and unintentionally. We had so much fun together. As many of us do, I feel connected to my family and childhood memories when I bake Christmas cookies. For this video, I thought I'd use my mom's recipe boxes to see what interesting vintage cookie recipes I could find. These boxes connect me with my childhood home and my mother. I'm picking recipes that epitomize vintage qualities in both the way the recipes are written and the ingredients, the preparation, and the actual end presentation. The two recipes I picked to make in this video are Pecan Sandies and Molasses Lace Cookies. And as always on this channel, I'm making the recipes gluten-free and vegan. If you're new here, I'm Beth. I have celiac disease, and for health reasons, I must eat gluten-free. I also make my recipes vegan or plant-based for those following such diets, either for health or ethical reasons, or maybe for both. If you have a recipe you'd like converted into a gluten-free and vegan recipe, let me know in the comments, since I can consider it for a future video. Now, let's get on to the recipes. This recipe is probably dated to around, I don't know, I'm going to guess here, maybe the late 50s, maybe the 60s, possibly the early 70s. But let's look at the telltale signs of why these are vintage. First of all, this is a recipe from the kitchen of Mrs. Nevin Schlusser. Okay, she's named after her husband. Another quality that makes this a bit of a vintage cookie recipe is the fact that it is a sandy recipe. Sandies are traditionally an older type of cookie. My mom used to make something called a sand tart, but sandies are similar. They have a crumble to them. They're crisp. I'd say this recipe is very similar to almond crescents, if anyone likes to make those. Okay, this recipe is for Molasses Lace Cookies. Whenever molasses comes into play, it definitely evokes a vintage cookie recipe. Some of the terminology used in these older recipes is kind of fun to read. For instance, here it says, bake in a slow 325-degree oven. I don't have a speed setting on my oven. I don't know about you, so there's that. I think maybe the author means that it's supposed to slowly bake, but I'm not quite sure. let's start with the Pecan Sandies recipe. Remember, I'm converting these to gluten-free and vegan recipes. So you'll need 1 cup of vegan butter. That's 2 sticks of vegan butter, 2 cups of all-purpose gluten-free flour that contains xanthan gum. I use King Arthur's Measure for Measure. You need 1 cup of ground pecans and 4 tablespoons of confectioner sugar, and then some additional confectioner sugar for rolling the cookies in, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and 1 teaspoon of vanilla. First, you want to cream the butter. Mix it well until it gets soft. Then mix in the flour and the sugar and combine that all together. Then add 1 teaspoon of vanilla. Mix again to combine everything together. If you're using a mixer, make sure you scrape down the sides periodically to incorporate everything that's getting stuck to the sides. After the batter is well combined, then you want to slowly add the pecans and gently mix them in. You don't want to mix it too vigorously. You just want to mix it enough so that the nuts are incorporated throughout the entirety of the batter. For each cookie, you want to take a tablespoon's worth of batter and roll it in your hands to create a ball. Then place these balls on a parchment-lined baking tray. You can fit about 12 per tray or a dozen per tray. In a preheated 325-degree oven, bake the cookies for approximately 25 to 30 minutes until golden brown, and you'll want the bottoms to be slightly brown. While the cookies are still warm, roll them in powdered sugar and place them on a cookie cooling rack. Because the first coating melts slightly, I recommend rolling the cookies twice in the powdered sugar. The back of the recipe card suggested that you could also roll the cookie dough into a log and then make slices of that log into cookie pieces, and then place those on a parchment paper lined baking tray to bake in the oven. The recipe didn't say anything about coating these cookies in the powdered sugar, but given the very low amount of sugar within the batter, if you do the log method, I strongly recommend that you coat these cookies in powdered sugar. To make the molasses lace cookies, you're going to need 3/4 cup of cane sugar, 1/2 cup of molasses, 1/2 cup of water, 3/4 cups of vegan butter, 1 1/4 cup of the all-purpose gluten-free flour, again, that contains xanthan gum, 1 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder, 1 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon, and 1 cup of chopped nuts of your preference. I used chopped or crushed almonds. In a saucepan, add the butter, the molasses, the sugar, and the water, and heat it until it starts to melt and combine together. While the ingredients were melting, I whisked together the flour, the baking powder, and the cinnamon in a separate bowl. Confession here, you're technically supposed to sift everything together, but I didn't. Bring the liquid ingredients in the pan to a boil, and as soon as that happens, turn off the heat. Add the flour mixture to the liquid mixture in the pan, and stir well to combine. Here's where I thought I had made a mistake, because the batter, it's technically not a batter, it was very liquid, almost like a candy recipe. I was also surprised to see that the mixture started to bubble up, almost like a brittle or toffee recipe. At this point, you're supposed to fold in the nuts of your nuts of choice. It's at this point that I started to really doubt myself. The recipe said to put only 1 teaspoon amount of the batter onto a baking tray and separate the cookies 3 inches apart. And I thought, certainly this is just too small of an amount. And I put them in a 325-degree oven, and sure enough, they started to spread out. This is a great debate. Do you want your cookies chewy? Do you want them crispy? I went on to a Pennsylvania Dutch Facebook page group, or several, and asked, should they be crispy or chewy? And sure enough, there were varying opinions. However, if you want them chewy, cook them less. If you want them crispy, cook them more. So I would do a cooking amount time between 12 and 15 minutes. I tried both. I used an icing utensil to get the cookies off of the baking tray and onto the cooling rack. The cookies are quite pliable when they're hot, initially out of the oven. Also, right out of the oven, they are very chewy when you bite them. But as they cool, they start to harden. So you have to decide what texture you want in the end. I like a combination of chewy in the center and crispy on the exterior. So if you make these, or your family has a history of making these, let me know what you prefer. Do you like them crispy, or do you like them chewy? Or maybe a combination of both? Let me know in the comments. Check out these next videos on the screen for more gluten-free and vegan takes.